this movie is ultimately about a homeless man who's willing to do anything to win back his mother's love, even go into hostile territory. And I felt that was something that was a universal element of what I had been through in my life. As I said before, I spent 10 years of my life homeless because of my sexuality. And when I joined the Marine Corps, I lucked out and that I discovered that my life had value and meaning because of my ability to protect other people. And I just felt like that needed to be said. And initially I thought it was going to be a book, and then Chester told me otherwise.
So we were sitting on our couch. We had just finished the Pure Kids festival tour. And thank you.
Thank you.
And we had a short before Pure Kids called Walk For Me that I had produced at Elegance Bratton directed. And it was between the feature version of Walk For Me, this film, and another film called Jazz Hands, which is like New Jack City meets Pretty Woman, but instead of crack cocaine, rather, it's his dick that he's selling. But
you got to see that
one. But I was like, Elegance, you should, for your first feature, you should do something that only you can tell and take people on a journey that only you can take them on, that's personal to you. And The Inspection was born into script form, essentially.
Elegance, can you talk a little bit about the writing process for you?
Sure. While this film is 100% autobiographical when it comes to the lead character's hopes, fears, and motivations, even if the particular situations are not things that I've been through, when it comes to the relationship between French and his mother, every one of those words that are said, every one of those dynamics are things that I experienced with my own mother. So I think in the autobiographical film, there's kind of a misconception that the mission is to remember and to write down. Like, I just remember what happened, I write it down on a page, and then I call Effie and ask her for money, and we just shoot it. And that's not what this was. This is really about the essence of emotional truth. I'm not trying to tie myself up in reams of accuracy, but more so I'm trying to invite an audience into the skin of a Black queer person in the military myself, right? So, when it comes down to it, the writing process, while, pulled from my life, this is really an exercise of trying to find that thing that I think everybody goes through, and using the specificity of my experience to be able to hopefully, use my experience to elevate and uplift audiences who watch this film.
How was that in digging into yourself? Like, how many drafts? Like, how long was that writing process? Like, you had to dig really deep. Like, did you, you start off with vignettes about kind of moments in your life and then build out from there?
Well, this process of writing would not have been as fruitful, and I don't think the quality of what people are reacting to would have been achieved without folks like Effie Brown being a part of that process, So I'll let Effie speak about how many drafts she made me write before I got a chance.
I love you so much. First, I just want to say thank you for that. Really, thank you. Because I know if anyone has ever worked with a producer before, when you're getting your drafts together, it could be a little tense, But you did a really beautiful job. And obviously, when I got to the script, you and Chester really already had it pretty baked in. It was just sort of getting it to, I'm going to just say, production form. Sure. And just sort of things. And I want to always give you like a shout out. And if there's other director writers out here, how beautiful you were able to let go of some things that didn't serve the narrative of the story. It was true in your story, but not necessarily serving the arc of the film. So I thought it didn't really matter how many drafts we got to the draft that needed to be shown. But I also just want to say, it's so good to see you all here. I've been a part of Film Independence since Jesus was a baby. And it feels like, real talk, if y'all know. And it's just so good to see you all here. It feels like coming home. So I just wanted to say that real quick. Mm-hmm.
Make sure you picture your ideas when she's outside. Okay, you know what?
Nobody said nothing about that. You know what I mean? Okay.
I mean, Elegance already talked about like writing a script and asking Effie for money, but I'm going to dial it back a minute and just say now you have this beautiful script, Chester. You know, what was that process starting off like? You know, finding Effie, going through our producing lab a little bit even. Can you talk about that process of getting this project off the ground?
Sure. The producing lab was very instrumental for me because of I like to say I was the momentum and like the whole thing that happened to get it to screen essentially. Flo, Casey Lemons is a mentor of ours, a teacher of Elegance's at NYU, but she always talks about flow and how things should flow in your script and how like it should be like a great song. Like everything that you see in the words, everything is just perfect. And the script was great before the lab, but we got notes back from the lab and I think also my mentor was Rebecca Green in the lab, who, shout out to Rebecca, who actually taught me how to put together a movie essentially. Like creatively we were there, but the logistics we didn't have before the producing lab. So she actually taught us how to put together logistics and look at it in whole picture essentially. But we left that lab and Elegance did maybe 2 more drafts of the script before it went to Effie. And Effie I met previously at the last LA Film Independent gala, actually. And I like walked up to Effie and pitched her the project. Like
I pitched her too, but she doesn't remember that I pitched her at all.
Terrible.
I totally pitched her, but she doesn't remember. She remembers Chester, but whatever.
No. But Chester was like, look, you're going to make this movie. And I was like, oh, okay. No, and you know what? And then when they came into my office, I was like, oh, this is my movie. I wonder if they know this. Because they were still dating other people, but I had to make sure.
Yeah, you guys met at the Project Involve Gala, was that the 20th? For all of our PI fellows in the audience.
Yeah.
Where Effie was being honored, actually.
Because I was in the first round. That's how old I am. Yeah, that's right. That's all right. There you go.
Yeah, but we did that lab, and after doing the lab and getting the script together and getting the correct budget together, we went into...
Okay, well, that was a little shade. Did you notice that? Did you notice that? I just want to make sure that you guys caught that part. Like, we got the right budget.
But we did that, and we did the Film Independent Fast Track Lab, where we took maybe like 40...
60.
Yeah, it was 60 meetings.
60 meetings.
It was 60 meetings in 2 days.
3 days.
3 days. See, it went so fast. But during that time, we dated a lot of people in LA. It was like speed dating. And right before that, we had 40 meetings at TFI, Tribeca Film Institute lab. So those are the only 2 labs that we did before we made the movie, or 3 labs rather. But
yeah, I did the Tisch development lab as well, production lab. But when we, sorry to take it, but when we got to Fast Track, it was interesting because again, we'd met Effie. I know my executive at A24 I went to college with, but it wasn't until we went to Fast Track and the whole town wanted to make the movie that I was able to call up A24 and be like, hey, look, you're going to feel real stupid if you don't take this movie because somebody's going to take it off your hands. And we had the steam, the momentum, to Chester's point, built up to where it worked. And they were like, we're going to make this movie.
And Film Independent helped with that momentum, essentially.
And then you knew that Effie was the one.
Yes.
Yes. Well, it had to be Effie because when I was in film school, Black and gay at Tisch, which is like literally at times one of the most lonely positions to be in. Like Effie was someone whose, time on Project Greenlight was inspirational to me. Someone that I kind of put on my bucket list of people that I guess my advice would be to anyone in the audience who's trying to get their feature made, really learn the landscape, learn the people who are making the films that you love. I saw Dear White People. I saw Real Men Have Curves. I casted Yolanda Ross in my first short based off of Stranger Inside. So, I'd become familiar with Effie's work and I was like, she would want to make something with me. And it took some time.
No, it
happened.
Perfect. It was perfect timing.
But it happened.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the making of the movie.
Oh, Lord.
You
Okay.
get A24 in. You've got Effie with you on the team now. What was next?
Mississippi.
Finding a location.
Well,
Mississippi.
it's a combination of things. Casting was really important for us. For me, authentic casting was of the utmost. I wanted an out Black queer actor to play the lead. And it took some time, but ultimately, we're in a world where, Black queer people, 1 out of 2 of us will be HIV positive in our lifetimes. We're 8 times more likely to commit suicide, 8 times more likely to be homeless. And I just knew that, and Jeremy and I would talk often about what it would mean to us as teenagers to have had a film like this, right? Where a Black queer person gets to be the hero, and what that would mean to future generations of Black queer people. So, to Effie and A24's credit, they supported that vision, and we were able to cast Jeremy Pope.
How did you find him?
I found him on Hollywood, like a lot of people did, on Ryan Murphy's show. I was also aware of him on Broadway as well. I mean, he was Tony nominated for 2 different parts in the same year. And, and then when he got the script, because after Fast Track, the script just went all over. Honestly, we pitched 60 people, but I feel like 180 people ended up getting the script after that pitch. And it got into Jeremy's inbox. And then Jeremy, made a meeting with me. We spoke, and immediately what I understood was that we had the ability together to craft a character that could speak to this void that exists in this business of representation. And he's just working with a Broadway talent like this, the discipline, the accuracy of emotional recreation. I need you to do it this way with a little bit of this added to it, a little bit of this taken away. And he would just hit his mark every single time. He actually auditioned live for all of the executives. Yeah. So it
we
had
also
to be
have
Jeremy.
to give a little bit of a special shout out to Kim Coleman, our casting director.
Yes,
Without
Kim
her,
Coleman.
She has an exquisite eye.
She does.
So you have Jeremy. What about Gabrielle Union? At what point did she come in?
Well, fortunately for us, Effie was already working with Gabby on something. So we had kind of a bit of an insider helping us to make the impression. But ultimately, I guess I could just tell a story. When I became a filmmaker through the Marine Corps. I was stationed in Hawaii making military films. And then I got a chance to go to New York. And when I got to New York, my mom was a real, troublemaker. She was a shit kicker. And she was like, oh, you think you a cameraman, huh? You think you can make movies? Why don't you go buy a camera and go film your little sister's graduation from elementary school? So I got to her graduation to film, and none of her classmates even knew she had a brother. Her teachers didn't even know that my mother had an elder son. And in that moment, I resolved to become a filmmaker. I resolved to become unavoidable. You're not going to ignore me. So, if you go to the theater, you're going to see my name on a poster. If you turn on the TV, you're going to see my name in the credits, and someone's going to ask you, is that your son? So Gabrielle Union is a brilliant, brilliant artist. I don't ever want to undermine that. But her ability to speak to my community, right? I knew for a fact that if my mother refused to answer my phone calls, somebody was going to tap her on the shoulder and say, Gabrielle Union is pretending to be you. And she would have to watch. So my mom died a few days after we were greenlit. So I have a lot of gratitude for Gabby for helping to bring my mother back to life and helping me to find some closure that I wasn't able to find with her while she was living.
So with cast in hand, we were talking about where you wanted to shoot this film. Where did you do boot camp?
I did boot camp in Paris Island, South Carolina. Hoorah. There's no Marines here.
No Marines are here.
So it's the same.
And a penny.
There's one. Hoorah.
There you go.
But yeah, I did a boot camp in Paris Island, and we ended up shooting in Mississippi, and Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Tuggle, who is zaddy, he's very fine. So find him. He's married, but you might, who knows? But nonetheless, his police academy was his poetic remembrance of his time at Paris Island in the late 80s. So there is this spiritual kind of synergy between a script that I wrote that was my emotional remembrance of Paris Island and a physical location that was also this person's remembrance. And I'll let these two speak about the other benefits of the location.
Elegance and I love photography books, and two photographers in particular that inspired a lot of the visuals that you see is Sally Mann, who does like Southern landscapes, and also William Eggleton, specifically William Eggleton's Cloud book. But we were in Mississippi and we just went book shopping, and we saw this Eggleton book at this bookstore, and I was like, Elegance, look at these clouds. And they just look so perfect, almost like a painting. And Elegance took the book and gave it to Lockie RDP, who shot Minari and Stranger Things, and was like, I want the clouds to look like this, Lockie. How do we make the clouds look like this? And Lockie took the book and made the clouds look like that, essentially. And Effie can talk to you about the particulars.
Well, exactly, the particulars. I'm like, you know what's great is when the creative and commerce can make a baby. And that's what happened in Mississippi because they had a cash rebate. So that was great. And then I'm like, so this is real. And then, so that was one of the reasons why we were looking at Mississippi, we were looking at Oklahoma. And Mississippi and the Film Commission, we have to give love to like Nina and Tavi.
Yes, Nina and Tavi.
Are they
yeah,
here?
Tavi.
Beautiful. There you go. No, she's like, you better say something. No, but like they took us around and we found Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Tuggle.
Daddy.
And then with the cash rebate and actually with the love of the Film Commission, it was really a no-brainer. The only thing, and I say this, and I love Mississippi, M-I, crooked letter I. However, you know what you don't do? You don't shoot there in the middle of summer.
No.
And you don't shoot there in the middle of summer where your cast is wearing full-on Marine uniforms and gear. And like we literally, that was that was the biggest, I'm sure, like the biggest struggle was the heat. Like people were falling out. So that was the one thing. And I have to take that as the one of being like, we should go now. We got the money now. We might have should have waited.
Well,
just saying.
I mean, the funny thing is we were promised 23 days. We actually shot this whole movie in 19 days because we had a COVID shutdown. Well, it was a combination of COVID and heat that shut us down the first time.
COVID was a blessing.
And COVID was...
We're with our family.
Yeah.
So like, just to be real, don't record nothing. Okay. No, but like, was it? Okay, never mind. It was nothing. Just kidding. No. Okay. No,
but the COVID, shut us down in the middle. And then when we picked back up, we lost 4 days. So, that, for instance, that graduation scene, that day I had 4 different camera teams operating at once, doing pickups from what we shot in the initial 14 days, but also trying to get the details of the graduation itself. So it was...
But we also, on the flip side of that, you got to go to New Jersey and shot a whole second unit. Yes. I'm just saying,
Yes. In 19 days.
Okay, you know what? I'm like, our production reports are going to say something different, but that's okay. We like it, though.
So you were shooting last summer. You were supposed to have 23 days, 19 days, and then COVID hit. I'm assuming your cast.
Yes. Of course.
Oh, yeah. It was real.
And crew.
Well, that's the thing. Like, one actor goes down with COVID, but the actor has a hairstylist, a makeup artist, a costumer. So you'd lose one, but you really lose like 5 at a time. So by the time we shut down, it was like, does the gaffer know how to do makeup?
Right. I'm gonna just pat it on.
Go to YouTube, figure it out. Yeah.
How long were you down for before?
4 months. Was it 4 months?
No, it wasn't 4 months.
Was it from...
Like 2 months,
It was 2 months.
It was like 2, yeah. It felt longer.
But we did some editing during that time,
editing and just taking advantage of the time because you said
we didn't lose.
We
didn't. What was great about this, and this is what I meant by like COVID, of course, was not a blessing because it was a very tragic thing that happened. However, for us, it garnered the time of like we got to stop and we got to regroup and we got to come back in the fall. So just to be, but like that was what I meant by like that. It was a bit of a blessing, and we were able to edit and be able to see the movie. And what was great about that is that we were able to see that the movie worked, and we got to see like, oh, okay, we need to go back and get that, or this needs to be sort of amped up. Like we were able to use the time, right?
For sure. When we went to edit that first time, we actually left with a 2-hour cut. So it was really, our editor was like, we don't want to cut too much. We want to leave it there so we can cut later once we add the other stuff. So the original cut of this film is about 2 hours and 30 minutes.
It sure was.
Aren't you glad it's not? And so did you end up picking up, like, in seeing what you, in the editing process during this time down, did you add in anything else when you picked up again, or did you pretty much continue on?
Well, the initial draft of this script was actually kind of dependent on flashbacks, these kind of memory flashes of French's time, say in the ballroom scene in New York City. And it just was not possible to do. While we were shooting in Mississippi, there were 4 other movies shooting at the same time as we were. So in terms of like background talent to even fill out the graduation or to do a ballroom scene, it just was not there, So that meant that a lot of his interior life that I had planned to do in flashbacks was no longer, we no longer had the means to shoot it. So one of the scenes I added was a fantasy sequence where French, gives head to Rosales, or fellatio for those who are Latin. That's a scene that we came up with because it was one of those things where I'm like, and mind you, that scene, it was like what the Daniel said earlier about collaborate with the universe. That spoke to me so deeply because that's ultimately what we had to do. So that day, even though we had picked up, even though it was the fall, there was still a lot of just Murphy's Law happening. Just people that you thought would be there were not showing up and just all sorts of things. So I had like a couple of hours free. And I'm like, okay, what can I do that could give me access to French's internal life? I have Raoul, I have French, and everybody else has to be in hair and makeup right now. So that's the scene we came up with. Blowjob is fellatio as well, if you didn't know.
To go in a little bit of a different direction. I actually want to talk about a little bit of the writing of the script, because one of the things I love so much about the film is that even in some of the most serious moments, the moments of levity that come up were just so beautiful and unexpected, and I just like go from heart-wrenching to smiling and just feeling everything. Like this scene when they're all in their bunks and then French at the end just like makes his joke. I'm trying to think, like, was that all scripted? How much of it was improv? Like, how much did you allow the actors space during the shooting?
Well, I come to this fiction feature debut through a documentary experience. So documentary has kind of like softened me to the notion that anyone who's on camera is a participant with the director. I'm not dictating to them what they're supposed to do. I am merely creating a template and an opportunity for these artists to rise to their powers. So in that regard, I was open to the idea of improvisation. That being said, everything that would make you laugh in this was written into the script. And it comes from, again, it's like I'm trying to synthesize the emotional experience of what I've been through in the Marines. And anybody who's been on a film set for more than a couple of days will tell you, intensity with strangers who you cannot escape will lead to insanely funny moments that in any other situation you would not be laughing at, right? And in my experience as a gay guy, I was out in gay when I joined the Marine Corps. I chose to go back in the closet in a way, right? But my name is Elegance. Pretty much every room I walk into, people assume I'm gay. And then, I was kind of like, I just found it funny, like the overlap between this like homosocial culture of the Marine Corps and the gay culture that I come from. Like, for instance, that uniform inspection, I have spent countless hours being felt up by strange men because ultimately the physical fitness is meant to whittle one's body down into the form of the uniform. It has to fit you a very specific way. So, and I got big hips, I got a big butt, and I would just have guys like, come over here and look at his ass. His ass is big, right? And I'm like rubbing on it, pinching it, pulling. And I'm just like, man, I'm not allowed to be turned on by this? And it's funny. You know, so I was just trying to lean into like that distance between where French comes from to where he's arrived, and that notion that like, oh my God, I'm different from all these people, but I have so much in common with them. You know, that's really where the seed of the humor in this piece comes from. It's that unexpected connection, that human connection that French is looking for.
So we talked a little bit about the writing of the script and how even this screenplay changed during the production. Let's go into post. You start editing. How does the story continue to shift in the editing process for you? I
mean, there are so many stages to this. I think the first stage, I have to give credit where credit's due to these two on this stage with me. You know,
I was going to say,
Chester's
more credit should be to him, because not only is he with you, he's with you 24/7.
Yes.
Like I get to go home.
Yes.
Right?
It's a chore to be with me 24/7. But nonetheless, you know, I had that in the first phase of edit of like just being there with Chester, having those weekly meetings with Effie, and just realizing that one, I had a choice to make. Is this going to be a 2-hour feature dramatic film debut, or is this going to be a 96-minute film, right? And it just felt, as we were going through the edit, that, and then Oriana Sodu, our incredible editor, she's just a titan and a genius in her own right. But, you know, it got to a place where I read this book in film school called In the Blink of an Eye, Edward Murch, and it talks about how films are supposed to be the language of dreams. He even talks about how when you're showing your film to an audience, very often it's a good idea to kind of look back and see when people are blinking. Because if the blinks are out of rhythm, that'll let you know that something's not right. And that 96-minute pace made all the more sense, right? What is it to spend time with a Black queer person in this space versus, again, to this idea of recollection versus emotional truth, right? Like, for instance, when I graduated boot camp, there was like 1,000 people there. It was a ticker tape parade. We did not have 1,000 extras, right? So at the end of the day, what I understood about my experience is I remember feeling close to the people that I knew, and that being the thing that guided me through that experience of graduation, you know? So in the edit, right, we're looking for like those shots you see of the shadows, right? The shots you see of people executing drill movements. This was how we started to lean on the edit, right? To trust the audience, to understand that, to fill in the emotional blanks so that this can be an interactive experience with an audience. This isn't just me, you know, regurgitating what I've been through, but instead an invitation to someone who may not know what that's like to experience.
And I just have to say really quickly to give you like real kudos. I've worked with a lot of first-time filmmakers. You were really extraordinary about being able to hone in your story, because that is so hard to do, because a lot of times filmmakers are so close to it that they won't. And there were very few things that you stood your ground on, and they're left in the movie. But I think whatever you've done, that is a skill that you have that is really, really extraordinary.
Thank you.
To hone something down, because not a lot of people can do that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's true, you know what I mean?
And to say it so eloquently as well. I'm thinking back from the 2.5-hour cut you had after like the 19 days down to your 96 minutes. Yes. Okay, so you have this film, you have A24, you've survived production, a COVID shutdown, you start submitting to festivals. In your wildest dreams, could you have imagined that you would be on this circuit as you are?
I don't want to sound ungrateful. I'm very, very grateful for this reception. But, you know, my executives, Effie and Chester will tell you, from the beginning, I told them, I want a red carpet. I don't care where we play. I got some fashionable people in this movie. I want to give them an opportunity to show off on a red carpet. You know, of course, I imagined it, I dreamed it, right? I would say to anyone sitting here, you know, back to my mom, you know, my mother was the first person to ever love me completely. She was also the first person to ever reject me completely. But I know for a fact I would not be sitting here if it wasn't for her. And, you know, when I would ever express an idea to be an artist, she would tell me, you're Black, you're poor, you better dream big, because if you aim for the middle, these white people are going to put you under their foot. That's how I grew up. So, of course, I imagined it. I dreamed it. I prayed. You know, that's the most beautiful part of this experience, is that I said a prayer for all of this to happen when I was in a homeless shelter. I had no idea God had said yes back then, but I worked towards it as if that did happen. And now we're here. So I'm grateful for this response. I'm not going to lie, but I believed in it too.
I just want to add too, this year we closed the New York Film Festival. We're the first, he's the first Black LGBT filmmaker to close the New York Film Festival, and the first Black filmmaker to close it in 60 years, essentially. First timer, rather. But a big thing we talked about before going to New York is the movie The Battle of Algiers, which this movie is inspired by as well. It's like it's a narrative film that looks like a documentary, essentially. And when it premiered at New York Film Festivals, the Black Panthers showed up. And the Black Panthers took notes of how to start a revolution from that movie in the audience, and the revolution was started literally a year later. But when we were making this movie and in the process, I think about what Daniel said earlier about how do you want the world to respond to it, and we wanted the world to have a guide on how to treat their kids that they can accept, or, you know, they can like but they can't, or rather they can love but they can't like because of the differences that, you know, their kids have that's different than a normal person, essentially. But that was a big part of that too.
Yeah, and additionally, you know, this idea of protecting a person to your left and to your right, I think we're in highly polarized political times at the moment, and I think the left and the right have forgotten how to listen to one another, and that's the greatest lesson I've gotten from the Marine Corps, and not even lesson, the greatest gift I've gotten. I have friends literally from every walk of life. I have a very close friend of mine who voted for Trump the first time, and we screamed and yelled and debated and debated and debated. And the second time, he didn't vote for Trump. You know, we found a way, because when you realize that your life is fully dependent on another person, you'll figure out how to get to the middle much quicker than thinking that you don't need that person to your left and to your right. So perhaps, you know, the military is an unusual place to find family, but that is one of the lessons in this film that in terms of what the Daniels brought up, that I really want people to take away, why I think this film needs to exist, is the notion that, you know, we can find our human connection even though we see things differently. And I think that's what we need right now.
Yep. So beautifully said. Agree with you 150%. That's so powerful. Talk to us about so many screens. I mean, you're at the Toronto Film Festival, you're at the New York Film Festival, but right beforehand we were talking about Montclair. Can you talk about some of the more meaningful screenings that you've had?
Oh my gosh. I mean, this right here
Besides
is so meaningful, because I mean, it's just like so many different things, like bows being tied right now, right? When we did Fast Track, I mean, when Chester applied to the producing lab, I actually, you know, I'll tell you guys, I had given up on applying to any labs at that point. I just quit, because I applied to everything with this film and got told no by everybody with this film. Chester was the one who said, I'm going to apply even though you said not to, and got us in. When we got in the Fast Track, I had no idea that it was going to lead to this. None. You know, I was just, okay, Chester, you told me to show up. I'm going to practice my pitch and I'm going to do the best that I can, you know? So this is a huge moment for me. Like, this is an incredible, like, to share this with y'all is just amazing. But that being said, there's been moments all the way around. Like, I mean, I'll go to the regionals, but at New York Film Festival, I went to Columbia University undergrad. I went to Tisch School of the Arts for grad film. I spent my first time as an artist, like making money in New York, I used to photograph club events, you know? And then I went from photographing club events to making Peer Kids, which I literally made in our apartment, our shitty apartment in Harlem. You know, so to go from those films and that experience to closing the New York Film Festival, and meeting Martin Scorsese and having Scorsese want to see my film, that just as a professional was such a huge moment in my career, in my life as an artist, to know that when I'm committed to something and I believe in it, that this is what I can achieve, that someone like a Martin Scorsese would care about what I make. That was amazing. And then when I got to go to Montclair, New Jersey, for their film festival, and my dad came, and my grandma, who's 92, she's not even supposed to leave the house. She rolled up with 2 cousins I'd never met before and dropped my dad off to the screening, and my dad rented a tux. And, you know, my dad when I was homeless, he was not a part of my life. To have him, and I said to him, because, you know, it's funny, when you have a result like this, you'd be shocked how many relatives just pop up. You know, Cousin Elegance, I've missed you for the last 20 years. Where you been now that you're a famous director? You know? You know, but I told my dad, if you want to start a relationship with me, you have to watch this film first. You have to know what I have been through. And what I am overcoming to open myself up to this relationship. So, you know, to be awarded in Montclair, New Jersey, to have my relatives there was really, really special to me. But there's just been, I mean, I'm about to go to San Diego to a Marine Corps base and talk about this movie. I wasn't even allowed to be out and gay in the Marine Corps. So to be able to go back to a space that is, you know, granted, you know, boot camp has a lot of positive memories for me because it helped me to gain a lot of discipline and things that I needed to get here, you know, but the Marine Corps was also a very traumatic space for me. It was hard for me to, like, you know, get promoted and not have someone that I love there. Because when you get promoted in the Marine Corps, your loved ones pin you on. I couldn't do that, you know. So to be able to go back and to be with my life partner and to be out through this film, you know, it's just crazy. It's incredible. You know, Lee Daniels is writing me emails, and Catherine Hahn is friends. Like, it's insane. It's all meaningful. And I'm also acting too. I'm in the new Whitney Houston movie as well. I Want to Dance with Somebody.
He's got a SAG card now.
Every chance he gets, he slips that in there. He's all like, I'm in 4 minutes of the movie. I got my SAG card. You waited a whole 20 minutes. You did good, baby. You did good.
Effie, I just, you know, you have been such a force as a producer and have lifted so many amazing first-time filmmakers in your career. She's still thinking about your SAG card and casting Elliot. I got to bring it back to the producer. I can't help myself. Yes. But you've lifted so many filmmakers through the years. I mean, and we were just talking earlier about, like, what it felt like to see the success. Can you share a little bit?
No, so what I said, and I actually, like, I love your relationship, and, like, you guys are my goals. So I'm like, I want to have, like, the ride or die relationship that you have. But one of the things that I was talking about before you guys got to dinner was, I'm not jaded or anything like that. I love all the experiences that I've had. But what is so beautiful about this one, it's like, and I don't have kids, and I was like, it's literally watching you both go through this is like watching someone have Christmas. Do you know what I mean? And, like, it's so beautiful to see, because he's not lying. He's thrilled. You know what I mean? At every festival, he's thrilled that, like, oh, I get to introduce, not that I'm not, do you know what I mean? But, like, he's so excited to share, and, like, and both of you together, like, it's super, like, that's what makes this, I'm getting a little, but that's what made this experience for me, and being, like, just to be able to be a part of your throuple. They don't know it yet. But I'm sorry, I'm all up and down, like, hey, I just want to be, I'm not a life partner, but you know. We don't put labels on things, right? That's what you kids do now, right?
Every film is a baby, Effie,
right, exactly.
So, like, it's amazing. We have to wrap up, but just let's talk a little bit about, aside from watching you in the new Whitney movie, you want to talk a little bit about what's ahead, more nonfiction work, more fiction work, big dreams that you want to put out into the world?
Elegance and I have a production company called Freedom Principle.
Yes.
Yeah. We're working on a couple of projects and wrapping up some deals, but the movie comes out November 18th. And I told a couple of people this earlier, but if you're a filmmaker out there and you have a short and you take 5 friends and you send me the ticket stubs, I'll watch your short. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I'm not going to offer that, but that is great.
That's a good offer.
But I really will.
Amazing.
In terms of what's next, I kind of have what I call cinematic dyslexia. I can't tell the difference between a documentary and a fiction film. I think they are just two different paths to the same end result. So I intend to continue making documentaries and making fiction films, but really I'm trying to blur the line between these two forms, and if I can, obliterate that line between these two forms. And as that goes forward, I've got, like Chester said, we have projects that are in the offing that we can't really discuss right now. But if you want to see something soon, hopefully it'll be programmed at a major festival soon, is our movie Hellfighter, which is about James Reese Europe, a forgotten civil rights icon from the early 20th century, who's the first Black man to play a show at Carnegie Hall, the first Black man to serve for his country as an officer in a foreign battle as the leader of the Harlem Hellfighters, which incidentally is also the first time that jazz music, ragtime music, was brought to France. So we're looking at his life through the lens of W.E. Du Bois's concept of double consciousness, which is essentially how Black folks see themselves through white eyes in America to understand this entertainment industry foundational person. And hopefully he won't be lost after our film. People will remember and care about him. So that's immediately next, but there's even more that'll be announced soon.
Congratulations. We are so happy to have been part of your journey along the way. Thank you for sharing your beautiful film with us tonight. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I hope you had a wonderful time. Tell your friends and family to see the movie November 18th in the theaters.
Yes, please.
Have a good evening.
Good night, y'all. Thank you so much.